Traoré shocked the UN. Traoré's final warning to Netanyahu. The United Nations headquarters in New York had seen countless tense debates over the years, but nothing quite like what was about to unfold. Delegates from across the globe had gathered for an emergency session, the air thick with anticipation. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered, and the massive hall buzzed with rumors of an unprecedented confrontation. At the center of it all stood Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the fiery leader of Burkina Faso, known for his fearless speeches and uncompromising stance against global injustice. On the other side of the political battlefield, Benjamin Netanyahu, the longtime Prime Minister of Israel, whose recent policies had ignited protests and criticism worldwide. The meeting's agenda was already heated, escalating tensions in the Middle East, accusations of human rights violations, and global calls for peace. But insiders whispered that Traoré had prepared something extraordinary, a message so blunt, so explosive that it could reshape diplomatic relations overnight. The build-up, first hours of the meeting passed with predictable speeches, carefully worded diplomatic statements, thinly veiled jabs, and the usual promises of further dialogue. But when Traoré's name was called to speak, the atmosphere shifted. He rose slowly, adjusting his dark military jacket, his trademark red beret tilted at an angle. His eyes locked on Netanyahu across the hall. The room went silent. Even the interpreters seemed to hesitate, knowing that whatever came next could make history. "Mr. President of the Assembly," Traoré began, his voice deep and steady. "Today I do not come here with polite words or political niceties. I come here with truth." The shock drawer wasted no time. He accused the UN of double standards, condemning smaller nations while turning a blind eye to powerful states. He detailed atrocities in war zones, calling out leaders by name, and then he pivoted directly to Netanyahu. "Mr. Netanyahu," Traoré said, pointing across the chamber, "you have crossed a line that the world can no longer ignore. For too long, you have used the shield of security to justify actions that violate the very principles of humanity. This is my final warning to you and to those who enable you. The world is watching, and history will not forgive." Gasps echoed through the hall. Diplomats exchanged uneasy glances, some scribbled frantic notes. Netanyahu leaned back in, his seat, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on Traoré. The final warning. Traoré's tone intensified. He spoke of the suffering of innocent civilians, of families torn apart, of children growing up under the shadow of war. He painted vivid pictures of bombed neighborhoods, displaced communities, and the haunting silence after gunfire. "I am not here to debate politics," he declared. "I am here to remind you and every leader in this room that the lives of the powerless are worth the same as the lives of the powerful. If we continue down this path, if leaders like you refuse to change course, then the fires of resistance will spread, and no wall, no army will contain them." He demanded immediate humanitarian corridors, an end to targeted attacks on civilian areas, and the beginning of genuine negotiations, not just for Israel and Palestine, but for all conflict zones where leaders played power games at the cost of human lives. The room reacts. The hall erupted, some applauding, others protesting loudly. Representatives from several nations stood in support of Traoré, while others whispered into microphones, making urgent calls to their capitals. The UN Secretary-General banged his gavel, calling for order. Netanyahu, known for his sharp retorts, requested the floor. His voice was cold and measured. He defended his nation's actions, accused Traoré of oversimplifying complex security threats, and suggested that the Burkina leader was seeking media attention rather than solutions. But Traoré stood firm, refusing to be silenced. "This is not about media," he shot back. "This is about morality, and morality is not negotiable." The aftermath. By the end of the session, it was clear this was more than a diplomatic skirmish, it was a collision of worldviews. In the hours that followed, social media exploded with clips of the confrontation. Hashtags like #TRAOREVs Netanyahu and #UnShowdown trended globally. Supporters hailed Traoré as the voice of the voiceless. Critics called him reckless and inflammatory. Back in Burkina Faso, crowds filled the streets, waving flags and chanting his name. Across the Middle East, his words were translated into dozens of languages, shared in cafes, newsrooms, and online forums. In Israel, political commentators debated whether Netanyahu should respond more aggressively or let the moment pass. Behind closed doors, diplomatic insiders later revealed that after the public session, an urgent closed-door meeting took place. Several nations pushed for a special inquiry into the allegations raised by Traoré. Others tried to mediate, hoping to prevent further escalation. It was said that in those private talks, Traoré repeated his warning, this time even more directly. If leaders refuse to listen to the cries of the people will make themselves heard in ways no leader can control. A turning point, no one could say for sure whether his words would lead to real change. But one thing was certain, the United Nations had not seen such raw defiance in years. Traoré had made it clear he would not be intimidated by power, position, or political alliances. And as he left the UN building, surrounded by security and flashing cameras, he paused for a moment, turned back, and told the waiting press, "History remembers those who stood when it was dangerous to stand. I will not be silent. Not today. Not ever." The image of him walking away, red beret catching the sunlight, his figure framed by the towering glass walls of the UN, became the defining photo of the day. For his supporters, it was proof that even in a world dominated by powerful nations, one voice, unafraid to speak truth, could still shake the halls of power.